welcome to our session today on managing references and citations, being made easy using Mendeley in partnership with the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World. In particular, we're kicking off our collaboration with OWSD with the Mauritius chapter. We'd like to once again thank our hosts today, Dr. Devika Sadul and Ms. Micheline Sinivasan. And with that, our session today is going to go for about 90 minutes. And please, if you have any question, please drop them in the Q&A as discussed earlier. So a little bit of a quick introduction to what Elsevier does in general, which is going to lay out few groundwork for how we can better support you as well. So the majority of people, when they think of Elsevier, the first thing that pops into mind that Elsevier is a publisher. And that is a very correct information. Elsevier is one of the oldest names in publishing. So the Elsevier family started publishing in the 16th century. The current organization has been existing since the 1880s. And the thing is, about 30 years ago, Elsevier decided to go beyond publishing a little bit more. In the internet age that we live in, it's not the scarcity of information that is the big challenge. It is actually an overabundance of information, problem with reliability of information, and as well as a problem of having to go through tons and tons of noise to get to the valuable information that you would need. So that's why Elsevier started to expand beyond publishing into what we call information analytics. So Elsevier currently defines as an global information analytics business specializing in science and health. And the idea is that you can combine, if you have quality content, you can always combine it with technology, with various solutions that can actually help scientists and healthcare practitioners on every step along the way. And it's our mandate to actually help institutions, professionals in science and in healthcare. So in general, if you look at everything Elsevier publishes, so Elsevier publishes electronically and in print, everything Elsevier publishes electronically, for example, is available on Science Direct. So it's just one platform containing all of Elsevier publications. And usually, if you look at the publisher, the role usually starts when the research has been done somewhere, and the publisher starts to get in communication with the new research when it's submitted for publishing. It goes under peer review, back and forth with the editorial office. Once we have an revised and accepted manuscript, then it's being disseminated by the publisher to readers and libraries worldwide. And then it goes back into the research community. And what we've had, so part of our growth is that we have expanded beyond this gray part here to introduce a lot of solutions that can help on every step along the way. And you can see Mendeley coming up in different points there. So the idea is that there are number of various different solutions, and some of them are free and accessible to everyone. Some require subscriptions. And it's just the idea of having a solution that can help on every step along the way. Today, we're going to be focusing on Mendeley. I'll be introducing Researcher Academy at the very end of the session because it's going to help us get our certificate and our materials. And as you can see, so today, Mendeley is one of the free solutions that are being offered by Elsevier. Of course, there are different institutional versions on institutional level for Mendeley that could be that would help an institution in total, but on the researcher level, Mendeley remains accessible to researchers with its full functionalities that you would need for reference managing and other processes as well. So I'm gonna start kicking off with an introduction to Mendeley, how to set up your account and getting Mendeley installed as well. So Mendeley as a starting point is a free reference manager and collaboration tool that can help you organize your research, collaborate with others online, and discover the latest research. So Mendeley is not strictly a reference manager, just that. It has way more to offer than just being able to manage your references and your citations while you are writing as well. So what could you use Mendeley for? You could use Mendeley to organize your own personal libraries and the references that you're using. You can use it to actually collaborate. So if you are working with other researchers and you are reading the same papers together, you are sharing notes and comments, and you are starting to write together, then that's definitely something Mendeley can help you with. If you want to draw an attention of your group members to a specific point or something that you've read and so forth, then it can be done also during Mendeley. Also, Mendeley can help you with discovery. So you can find as you go through Mendeley, Mendeley will start learning your pattern, your research interests, because Mendeley can be connected to your profile on Scopus to know what you have already published, that Scopus indexed. And in addition, it knows what you're currently reading. And it starts to pick out on your research directions based on your history and your current readings as well. Mendeley will use artificial intelligence as well to start predicting what papers you will probably be interested in, to send you recommended articles every now and then. So it can help you to stay up to date. And one of the things that you will find very, very useful with Mendeley is that Mendeley incorporates a search engine. So you can search for articles using Mendeley, and Mendeley will help you to track down if there is an open access version of the article being made online, and it will help you get access to that article if it is accessible online, or even if you are connected via your computer and to a network where, for example, your university network and your library has subscriptions to different publishers. So Mendeley will start tracking down the full text document to check if you have access to it, either via your subscriptions available on your internet connection or via open access. We will go into details with that a little bit down the road. Also, one of the key points there is that Mendeley can help you store your data, manage your data, and sharing research data is really one of the very novel trends when it comes to academia in general. Part of an effort to make research more reproducible is that scientists are now sharing their entire data sets, not just an article that's 20 pages long, for example, that describes the work that they've done, but they're actually sharing raw and processed data that the research have been based on. If you are sharing your data via Mendeley, you can set your own terms and conditions for when it should be accessible to everyone. You can have a DOI link for others to start citing your data sets directly as well. And in addition, or in conclusion, really, it's really about helping you manage many aspects of your career using Mendeley itself. So it basically consists of 3 parts. So there is the Mendeley software you can install on your computer. There is the online website for mendeley.com. And recently there is actually a plugin that's added to your browser that can help you with a lot, and as you will see a bit later. And finally, there is a Mendeley application for your mobile phones or tablets. It can help you pick up your library on the go. So one of the key points here that you would need to know about Mendeley, with Mendeley, you get free cloud storage so that your library can exist on your computer, and it's synchronized with Mendeley online. That's how you can pick up your library anywhere online from any other device or via your applications on your mobile phone and or tablets. So it supports all major browsers. There is a data repository, as we discussed, so you can store data for just your own private use, or just sharing your data sets to be visible only by your collaborators, or you could publish your data sets publicly via Mendeley as well. So getting started with creating an account on Mendeley. So it's free to create an account on Mendeley. I'm gonna just go a little bit step by step with the process with you. So just opening my browser here. And I just need to visit mendeley.com. So Mendeley being an Elsevier solution, it uses the same account that you would need to use on any Elsevier's other solution. So for example, if you have, for example, if you have created an account on any Elsevier solution before, so Science Direct, for example, Scopus, if you have submitted a paper to Elsevier, any of Elsevier journals before, and you have had an account on the submission portal for your journal, then the same username and password are used across any Elsevier solution. So same email and same password that you have created elsewhere on Elsevier solutions would work on Mendeley and vice versa. So if I had never had an account, I could just go into sign in and make sure first. So if I try to sign in on Mendeley and I put in my email, what would happen is that Mendeley will start looking if this account was ever used on any other Elsevier solution. If this email has been used, an account has been set up for it anywhere else on Elsevier, it will just ask you for the password that you have used. Or if this email was the first time ever to be introduced to any Elsevier website, it will ask you to fill in a registration form. And for that, we would strongly recommend that you would actually try to use your institutional emails. So generally with Elsevier solution, if your library, so for example, if I'm using an email affiliated with one of the universities, for example, and that university library has subscribed to some of Elsevier solution, one of the things is that we recognize institutional emails, so you can use your institutional email to access your library holdings if there are any. And at any point, if your university library adds more solutions, then your institutional email domain can help you access the subscribed solutions as well. So for example, if your university library provides you access to Scopus, for example, or if you have access to Science Direct. So Science Direct has about 20% of its content in open access, but the remaining 80% are under subscriptions. So you can create a free account on Science Direct, but for example, if your library has access to some of the subscribed content, then your institutional email can help with that. And it works the same with any other Elsevier solution. So for example, clinical key being used by health practitioners, for example, and so forth. So for this, I would just put in, I will just try for the sake of time, I'll just put in a fictitious email. So I'm not going to use a real email for now, just for the sake of demonstration. So I'm just going to put, so for example, I'm going to put it at, so I believe this is the email domain for University of Mauritius, for example. I do not have an email at University of Mauritius, and I'll just add in a number here just to make sure that there is no one bearing my name at the university. So, and I'll just click on continue. And this email has never been used before. One of the key tricks that you can use if you are trying to use your institutional email, so there is a little button here that's called sign in via institution. And this is where, this is where I'm just telling, this is where I'm just telling my Mendeley to start detecting the last part of my institution. So here it's asking me, I'm just telling them that I'll put in an institutional email. Usually typing the name of an institution would not work with the majority of institutions. It has a very different setup, but email should work. So I've entered my, am I right with the, I believe I should be. Okay, so let's try something else, for example. Okay, so there might be a bit of a glitch here now. Anyway, so Mendeley should be able to detect your institutional email, and usually it's able to read the last part of the institution email. So just let me try to check that out for a minute. I just restarted my browser because I was connected via IP. Thing is, when I'm putting an email, an institutional email, if it exists already in the database of Elsevier, you should be able to see the name of the university, as you can see here. And I believe it works. So if you are putting it as a sign-in via institution, and I'm putting in my institutional email, if that email domain exists in Elsevier database, then you should be able to access it. Here, I've used the fictitious email as well. That's not my email. So in order for Elsevier to verify your email, they will send an email to your inbox with a link for confirmation, and then you can go back here as well. If I'm creating an account, and I'm just gonna roll on a step back. So once again, if the email has not been used before on Elsevier, so this email has not been used before, it's asking me to register. So I put in my given name, my family name, and my password. So it's a password of my choosing, just 8 characters, and then I click on register. And if you have activated your institutional email as well, after confirmation of your institutional email, you'll go back to this registration screen. However, if your email has already been used elsewhere on Elsevier, so for example, I'm gonna put in my Elsevier email for now. And it will, because it recognizes that this email has been used and linked to an account before, it will just ask me for my password. If I don't remember it, I can just click on forget password. And for the sake of time being, I'll just sign in to my account. So as you can see, if you can compare here for a minute, how things have changed before and after signing into Mendeley. So now, as you can see, so now I have access to Mendeley, the search portal on Mendeley, and I can also start downloading the Mendeley software to be installed on my computer. I have access to my library online and the groups I'm collaborating with as well. Just for the sake of comparison, before signing in, this is what Mendeley looked like. So it's a bit similar, if I might say. You still have access to the search engine, but there are more details about how Elsevier, how Mendeley works. And as you can see here, so you can also find download very highlighted. If you click on download here, or if you have already signed in, then you can find download here as well, or being popped up here. So the various versions available for download on Mendeley. There is what's called the Mendeley Desktop, which is a little bit of our legacy version. And there is the new software that was recently rolled out also for managing references on your computer, called Mendeley Reference Manager. So Mendeley Reference Manager and Mendeley Desktop, both are versions you can install on your computer. We're keeping both versions to accommodate different preferences for different researchers, but both will work equally to help you manage your library on your computer, synchronize with your cloud storage, and manage your in-text citations as well. You go in a bit further, so there are tools and add-ons to further enhance your research. There is the Mendeley Web Importer. This is a very, very powerful tool, as I will show you. So it helps build your library while you are reading papers online. And I guess it's one of the best added features that were added to Mendeley. There is the Citation Plug-In. So this helps link the Mendeley, whether it's the cloud storage or the version on your computer, to your word processor. Mendeley supports Microsoft Word and also LibreOffice if you are into open source word processors. And also it helps generate BibTeX if you are using LaTeX, for example, to write your manuscripts as well. There are thousands of citation styles that you can use, and you can even create your own, as we will see at near the end of our session today. And also remember that there are the apps you can use on your Android or your iOS. So you can find it on either Google Play or App Store. So just climbing a little bit up, let's go check the Mendeley Desktop. So if I clicked on it, as you can see, it will just start downloading the setup file. It's a very simple setup that I can go through with just a few nexts. And the first time I would open my Mendeley Desktop, it will ask me to sign in with the same account I've created online, just to start synchronizing my cloud storage with the computer storage on the software. If I click on the new Mendeley Reference Manager, as you can see here, so it will start downloading the newer interface called the Mendeley Reference Manager. And I can click on download as well. So that's the newer version. And as you can see, it always detects my software, my operating system. So now it's detecting it's either Windows 7 or above. I'm using Windows 10, for example. But if I'm using Mac OS or Linux, it would work through as well. So this is for installing the software that will go on your computer. Very important thing is the web importer, and I would strongly recommend that you start using that. So if I'm clicking on the web importer here, it's a plugin, as you can see, that works with my browser. So now I'm using Firefox. It detects that I'll be using the plugin for Firefox. And sorry, if I'm back to using Chrome, for example, Google Chrome, and I go on to installing the web importer, it will also detect my browser here. If I just click on it, it will take me to the browser store. So that's Chrome Web Store, and I can actually start adding it as well. So going back, so that should cover the creation of accounts, and that should cover as well how to install the different tools that you would need to use out of Mendeley. And we will be diving a little bit more into how to cite as you write, how to annotate as you read, curate and share reading lists, organize your library and access it from everywhere. Remember that there is a cloud storage, there is your computer and all the files stored on your computer, and there are your phone as well. So this is a little bit of the same of what we just described to install and create your account. So a little bit of what goes on the free version of Mendeley. So you get 2 GB of cloud storage for free on Mendeley. you can share up to 100 megabytes of that library. And if you look into 100 megabytes of papers, usually papers are not that big, and it's really and really gives you a lot of room to share a lot of papers, and they pretty much should cover more than needed for any paper or any thesis or any funded project that you're working on. You can public groups have recently been deactivated, so you can use the private groups. So public groups were previously created, but you cannot share full text papers over a public group because that full text paper could be copyrighted. That being said, private groups are the ones created for sharing your paper, so you can share any paper no matter what its content is, and the majority of publishers are really okay with private sharing of papers. And you can create up to 5 private groups. Each of those private groups could go up to 25 members each. So let's dive on a little bit on getting started to use Mendeley itself. So the first thing you would need to look into, so we are going to need to start looking at the different versions of Mendeley. So I'm going to start a little bit with the online version. So if I'm here and I go over to my library, so here I can see the cloud storage for my library itself. So as you can see here, so I can see a list of all my references, who the authors are, what's the year of the publication, what's the title, the source, when it was added, and whether or not I have a PDF record for this reference or not. So that's one of the important things, is that you can actually add either a full text, you can have a reference record in your library connected with the full text paper if you have it, or you could have it without just a citation data. So you can actually see here that this paper, for example, does not have a full text paper. So sometimes I don't have the PDF, or in other cases, I could have just seen a paper or a book in hard copy in my library, for example, in my university library, and I could start citing that as well. So as you can see, it's all sorted out. So I have all references. I have a list for recently added, recently read, favorites, my own publications, and I could start building my own collections to organize them and have my own private groups as well as the recently decommissioned public groups. So how do I start adding papers to these library as well? So one of the things that I would need to get started with, so for example, if I'm using a computer version of Mendeley Desktop, while it loads up. Sorry, just needed a quick update. So this is the Mendeley desktop version, as you can see it as well. So it can handle my library as well. And one of the things, one of the easiest, but I would say less recommended ways of, one of the least recommended ways of doing so is that if I have a PDF for a paper, so for example, let me just go check any paper online. So I could just go to Mendeley here. And I could look for a paper, for example, discussing COVID-19 or obesity or anything. If I have an access to this paper, view PDF, so I actually, yeah, that might not be the best example out there. So just let me pick up one of the papers I already have on my computer. So for example, this is one of the papers. Sorry. So this is one paper here, for example. So if I know where that paper is being stored, so for example here, so one of the basic ideas so is that you can actually drag and drop your papers onto Mendeley desktop. So I could just drag that paper here, just add it to Mendeley. And as you can see, Mendeley will start automatically to read the metadata associated with that file. So it will fill in what's the title, it detects it's a journal article, who the authors are, what's the journal, the year, the issue, pages, the abstract, the author keywords, who the publisher is, different cataloging based on DOI or ISSN. And because I already used the full text paper, so it's now in my Mendeley library. So if I click on that PDF icon here, I can see the full text paper that I was just reading as well, okay? And one of the key important things, if you are using the drag and drop method to add papers to your library, is that you should always revise how this looks like. In many cases, there are many cases where the publishers might have a bit of issues with the preparation of metadata, especially if the article is still in press, if it's still a print proof or an article in press. If the article is a bit older, then you can actually find that issue as well. So for example here, so picking this one, for example, so this is actually a report and I believe the data are read correctly, but this here, for example, if I open the PDF, so it's actually a paper prepared by a publisher and probably was in early stage. And as I can see here, so the metadata is a bit corrupted and Mendeley can't recognize it. So I will have to do that correction manually. So I can actually start typing here and correcting the data as well. In some of the cases, sometimes Mendeley is able to do that correction on your behalf. So I could right click here and I could ask Mendeley if they could update the details for this record. So if I right click here, it wasn't able to find out which paper this was because basically it had no data at all. But in many other cases where the data is not just complete, so for example, for this one, if I right clicked, it actually corrected the data here. If I press on Control Z, for that PDF is the paper actually from the 50s. So that paper, Mendeley was able to read the authors, the journal, the year, actually it's 2004. I don't believe that is very correct, unless it's a cover or it's a book republishing the paper. Anyway, if I go back here and I could ask Mendeley to start verifying that information there, so update details, it actually updated the details there for that paper, as you can see there. So how does it really update that information for all the paper there? So this one here does not have a journal title. I can go over and ask for an update. If not, I can check the PDF and check where it was published. It's actually a thesis, not a journal article. So I could just go here and correct any data that I see not fit. So I could actually go and look for thesis. And now it's being marked as a thesis. All the relevant fields are now available. So I can just put in here Massachusetts Institute of Technology, for example, and this is mechanical engineering and so forth. So as you can see, so while dragging and dropping is very intuitive, it entails some work to do that correction on your behalf. So there are actually easier ways to actually start building your own library like this. And this is also, just for the sake of clarification, this is also very similar to the newer version, the Mendeley Reference Manager. Because you can also, so if you look at the interface here, it's very similar to the online website, rather than the classic look that you will get on Mendeley desktop. But it works just, works just the same anyway. Had to sign out. So basically, Mendeley desktop version looks exactly the same as the version that you can see online as well. So let's check a little bit smarter ways to add documents to your library. So one of the easier ways, so as you can see here, so for example, when I did that search on COVID-19, some of those articles were actually paywalled, but actually Mendeley can help me a little bit with that as well. So what could happen here is that if I'm doing a search on Mendeley itself, this is what we call the Mendeley Catalogue. Mendeley Catalogue works by aggregating all the papers being, so it starts with aggregating all the papers added in everyone's library. So whenever anyone is adding a new document to their library, it becomes, with the information listed in it, it becomes part of the Mendeley Catalogue. Of course, when you are adding a document to your library, you can mark that this is a document of unpublished data. So for example, if you're still writing your paper or if it's an unpublished book, you can always skip a certain article from being added to Mendeley Catalogue. And when I'm doing a search here, I'm actually doing a search for across the Mendeley Catalogue. As you can see here, I have 1,905 results. And there is always that very easy option because all the data here will be verified. So there's always that very easy option to just add to my library as well. And now I can see it in my library there. So if I look into my mendeley.com library, I can actually start seeing that article there. And as you can see, so this is the part where I referred to earlier, the Mendeley Catalogue part, and I could actually skip if this is not something I want shared on the Mendeley Catalogue yet. I could just deactivate this if it's still unpublished work, for example, or an unpublished book or so forth. So on another note as well, so if so I can just go easy and about and around, just adding documents to my library, just conducting search on Mendeley engine as well. And Also, Mendeley Catalogue offers me the option to filter by year, filter by document type, by the name of the journal. By the way, all of these three here are actually preprint servers. So medRxiv, SSRN, that's Elsevier's preprint server, archive, bioarchive. So these are actually preprints. If I click on more, I can see more journals here. So these are actually final published papers, I would assume. BMJ, PLOS ONE, Journal of Medical Virology, and more. I can see who the authors are, and I could restrict my search to just open access papers, as you can see there. I can sort by relevance, I can sort by date, or by most cited papers. So that would be step 2, or the second method of how you can add papers to your library. So the first one was just dragging and dropping PDFs. The second one was conducting a search on Mendeley Catalogue. But what if I'm not using Mendeley Catalogue and I just want to use something different? I want to just go to a publisher website and come across a specific paper. Or I want to use a different search engine, for example, or whatever way I would use. So if I go over to a publisher website, so let's say I'm going to start off with Elsevier's publishing website, which is Science Direct, but I will go over to other publishers as well. So let me just go to Science Direct, for example. And I could also go visit any other publisher. So let's say, for example, that I would, I can actually use a search engine like Google Scholar, for example, with all the difference in how they work. And I could also go visit maybe another publisher website, for example. So here I'm on Science Direct itself. So I have an account. This is denoting that I have, that my institution has been detected. Even if my institution is not detected, it doesn't really matter, because there's about 20% of the content is being made open access at least. So I could just go around within the open access content if that's the case. So if I'm searching for a specific keyword, and let's say COVID-19 and pathogenesis, for example. So I have 3,000 results there. I can go to, if I'm looking at an article here, so usually Elsevier Solutions and many other publishers as well have a direct button of adding to Mendeley. And here, because I have the Mendeley Web Importer, it just invoked the Mendeley Web Importer there. And one of the really beautiful things about the Web Importer, so this here, you can press it at any time. It will start detecting what is the paper being discussed at the web page I'm opening, whether it's an Elsevier or another publisher. So it detects that this web page is talking about a journal article whose title is The Roles and Potential Therapeutic Implications of C5a in the Pathogenesis of COVID-19 Associated Coagulopathy. And it detects here that the PDF is accessible. I can see the PDF icon. But one of the beautiful things is that it detects every other paper that was mentioned across this web page. So I can see here that there are 56 more references detected on this web page. Where do these come from? They could be the recommended articles here, or they could be the list of references at the end of this paper here. And now I can actually start marking which of these I want to add to my library. And I can also ask Mendeley to get me the PDF. It tells me that I have access to this PDF. I have access to this PDF. Here it's trying to check if I have access to the PDF. And it tells me, yes, I do have access. So for example, it's open access, or whether it's in my subscription, Mendeley will work across both. And I could, with a single click, I'm not just adding the article I'm reading, I'm adding other articles that it referred to as well. And at the end, I can just click on add, and all of these articles will be added to my cloud library, which can then be synced with my Mendeley desktop or my Mendeley reference manager that I've installed on my computer. I could have them added to my library at large, or I could have them added to any folder that or group that I've previously created. So this also works across other publishers as well. So that's another article from another publisher. So this is from Nature Medicine, for example. And as you can see, so Mendeley Web Importer is telling me that the PDF is accessible. So it's just giving me a hint that Mendeley has found the PDF for this article. So if I click on it, it will open that article in the Mendeley Enhanced Reader. So I can actually read it and I can add it to my Mendeley as well, or I could use the same trick of just clicking on the Mendeley Web Importer. So it will detect the article, the main article this web page is talking about. It will try to find a PDF for it, whether it's through my subscriptions or through open access content. And it will also start detecting the other references on the page. So there are 13 more references, and it's telling me which I can add the PDFs for as well. So I could just mark the ones I'd be interested in adding to my library as well, or I could just view the PDF first, or I could go over and modify or update any of the data here. So this is, for example, Rheumatology International is a journal. It didn't detect it was a journal article, so I can actually modify that as well on the go before I add them to my library as well. If I need to cite the web page itself, if I scroll to the very bottom, so there is always the option to cite this not as a journal article, but as a web page, if I so believe is the case. So that would be the second way. I would say this is the most preferred. So this is actually way number 3. I would say this is the most advised way to use the Mendeley Web Importer. It will handle it all on your behalf, whether you are trying to cite an article or you're trying to cite a web page. There are 2 other ways for adding articles to your library. So for example, if I'm going over with another publisher and I don't want to use the Mendeley Web Importer for anyway, so there is usually an option to cite this article that you can see across different publishers. And usually you can download what's called a citation file. It's an RIS format file. So if I click on download citation here, I can see an RIS file. If I drag and drop this RIS file to my Mendeley desktop or my Mendeley reference manager software, so let's go a little, let's Mendeley desktop. Yeah, so that's there now. So that RIS file, having a bit of a screen freeze. So here, if I just drag and drop this here, it will start reading the citation data. Of course, the RIS file does not contain the full text. So now I have bibliographic data for this, but I don't have the full text icon here accessible. So that's another way where you can download the citation file in RIS if you so need to. And you can find this across the majority of publishers. And even if I'm doing a search, for example, on Google Scholar, so let's say I'm doing a search on fertilizer, and I'm adding, for example, nitrogen, and put in legumes, for example. So the papers I can see here, whatever they come from. So this comes from Elsevier. or other. So I can actually see how to cite this article, and actually I can download the file in different formats, whether it's BibTeX, EndNote, RefMan, or RefWorks. All these files are being, whatever file I'll get is still readable. So this is RIS, RefWorks. Has a direct export option, for example. So if I download just RefMan, which is the RIS format, if I download it as a BibTeX file, it still can be imported within Mendeley, or an EndNote file also can be imported within Mendeley as well. Or I could just go over to the publisher. So that's from Wiley, for example. And I could just also find either to download the entire PDF or download the citation file, or just easier to use the Mendeley Web Importer. The last way to add a file to my Mendeley Mendeley, whether it's desktop or web importer, is that I could just go on files and add entry manually. So here I will fill in the details myself. So for example, if it's a book I just read in hard copy in the library or anything else, so I could just fill out this form. Same can be done on Mendeley website itself. So I could just go here to my library and just add a new one, add a manual entry, and I can just put in the manual entry there. Another thing is that so you can import files from your computer, or you can import a library. As I told you, it can import other files. So like RIS, like XML used by EndNote, or BibTeX files used by, if you're using LaTeX, for example. And on the Mendeley desktop, you can, instead of adding a single document at a time, you can add an entire folder or watch folder. Watch folder means that you can tell Mendeley to observe a specific folder. If any paper PDF was added to it, it will be added to your library as well. And while the sync happens automatically online, you can always press F5 to synchronize your library and make sure it's up to date. If you're using a different reference manager, you can import the entire library, BibTeX, XML, RIS, or Zotero. And you can also export that library into other formats. So you can export your entire library or part of it as BibTeX if you're writing into LaTeX, or RIS or XML there as well. So that should cover how it would work with, so that should cover a little bit of an introduction of how to build your library into Mendeley, how to add the documents you are working on. As we go, we would need, instead of just having all those papers just listed out there or on the cloud storage, here I can actually start organizing the library that I've built up. So I can always search those. However, I can actually start building my own collections. So these are called collections on the online and the Mendeley Web Importer platform. And if I'm using still the legacy Mendeley desktop, they are called folders. So I can actually create any folder and just add articles to it here. So I can put in my masters, my recent project, and so forth. Or I could just create a new folder and add whatever documents I want to add to it. Another trick to help organize your documents as well is that you can go over to any record that you have on Mendeley, and you can add your own tags. So these are like hashtags I would use to just organize my papers. So for example, I could use a priority tag. I could use a tag for things I would write into chapter 1 of my thesis. Or I could use a tag that's called litrev, literature review, for example. So I can actually link literature chapter 1, for example. So whatever tags I can use, I can always go back to my entire library or any specific folder, and I could just do a filtration by those tags. So here I can see which all the papers I've indicated as a priority, all the papers I have written as a tag of literature review, of chapter 1, papers that were shared in by my advisor, for example, or by my collaborator. So whatever tags I'm using, I can use those as a filter as well to come back and reach out those specific papers I'm looking into. And these work quite the same. If you are looking here, so here I have the folders as well. I'm using different accounts between the online version and the desktop version, so that's why the library might have a bit of differences, because these are not the same emails I'm using here and there. So I can go over, so this is a PhD student folder, for example, and I could go over and see those papers here. And if I go to any paper, the option of adding tags still remain there, and I could use those tags to actually filter my, so I could say that this is related to my current grant, for example. So that's one of the tags I have written there. And I could use the search actually to search for those tags here that I'm using as well. The last item there, so if we go back to our presentation, so you can add your libraries to recap. You can add libraries from Mendeley Catalogue. You can use the Web Importer, and you can import a library from an RIS file or an XML or a BibTeX file. You can drag and drop PDFs. You can browse for files or folders on your computer, or add an entry manually as well. For organizing your library, so you can mark multiple documents and put into a folder or what we call a collection. And you can also click on the Add To button down there, and you can search for your library. You can add your own tags to help make it more discoverable. And the last thing I would need to add here is that you can actually do a lot of the readings that you need to do on Mendeley itself. So let's open this article here. And so this has its PDF already there. Mendeley has a built-in reader, whether it's the desktop version or the web version or the Mendeley Reference Manager versions. So as you can see here, so I'm reading this file here. I can actually start adding my own notes. So for example, I can add in a note here. So that was something I added previously. I could just add, as I'm reading, I'm putting in a note here that, for example, I could put in a note here, results need to be cross-checked against other literature. I could add another note in a different color, in red, for example. And I could say here, for example, that need to paraphrase for section 132 or 121 or whatever. I can do a bit of highlighting for these here as I'm reading. So these are different options. But the thing is, that same file could be shared with others as well. So whatever this discussion here, those comments can be visible and others can contribute to this reading and those comments if I'm sharing that article with a private group as well. One of the very interesting new features is the notebook. So here I have a notebook. So I have the file, I have the annotations I've added, and I could put in the notebook part. So I can actually start maybe paraphrasing while I'm reading this, so I could say, I could go on paraphrasing and say, for example, that Khan et al. Have demonstrated that so and so, and I could actually do that while I'm writing. The notebook is read online and on the Mendeley Reference Manager version. But on the Mendeley desktop, you will not be able to see that notebook. So here I can actually save this library. If I'm sharing that file, associated notebooks to this file will also be shared by others. So how do I share those? How do I share this library if I'm put in that effort? So I can just create a new private group here, or I could just do it on my Mendeley Reference Manager. So Mendeley Reference Manager has the very similar interface to the web version, or I could do it on my Mendeley desktop, all the same. I can just go over to groups and create a new group. I can create a new group here, or create a new group there as well. So if I have created one of those groups, so for example, that's this group here, I've shared. So if I go over to this group, I've shared all those articles with other teammates as well. So just as I created a new private group, Mendeley.com community, I can see the groups I've created, who are the members. So this one has, for example, 16 members. So if I go over, I could see a page for this group, who are the members, and who are the members I've invited, what are the documents we're sharing. And I could adjust any settings, add a photo for that group, for example, or a description. And back to the library here, these are the documents I've added. So for example, if any of those documents, for example, this one here, so if I go over to annotations, for example, so I just need to open that. If I'm putting in more annotations here, they could be read by other team members as well, and we can start sharing our comments as we are reading that paper together. So this brings us back. So the read and annotate, the sticky notes to be used, and the notebook. And that would conclude our part on organizing the library. To collaborate, you can create the new groups. As said, you can add invitation. So public groups are no longer working, so private groups are the only option now. And I could see them in my Mendeley desktop or reference manager. And that about settles it for there. On our last section here today, I'm gonna go through the how to, if I've built the library, if I've read everything, if I've collaborated and shared everything with everyone, how can I actually start using Mendeley to help with my citations? And you might be wondering if already we are running out of time and we don't have enough time to cover this, but really, this is a very, very fast way of doing so. The first thing that you would need to know about using in-text citation is that you can either use, so if you have your software installed on your computer, whether it's the Mendeley desktop or the Mendeley Reference Manager, you can only use one of those two versions at a time for a specific document. So for the first example, I'm gonna use the Mendeley desktop version. What I would need to do here is that I need to go to Tools, and I need to make sure that the MS Word plugin has been installed. Okay, if I have used the MS Word plugin, and I go over and open my Microsoft Word. So here, if I have activated the option from Mendeley Desktop to install MS Word plugin, I go over to Microsoft Word, and if I go over to the References tab, I can see now what's called Mendeley Cytomatic, okay? And as I'm writing anything, so X, Y, Z, et al. Proved that whatever, and I need to put a reference for that, I can just click on Insert Citation now. And here is a very light widget that could help search your library on Mendeley desktop. So I could, for example, search by the name of an author. So I could say that this was the author, for example, here, and there was another by this author there, for example. So if I click on OK, I'm adding papers from both authors at this specific point. Another point that ZYX showed that. And if I remember, I don't need to remember the author name. It could be the title. So for example, I could say that it was related to microstructure, for example, and I can see the list. These results come from my own library. So this one here. And I could add another third part, for example. And if I remember, I could even search by the year or attended as well. I could search my entire library or one of the folders that I've created. So let's say I'm gonna search for a paper that was from 2013. Yeah, and I can actually, I'm doing the search now. So that was the paper there. And I click on OK. I now have the in-text citations. I can see the style here is APA, American Psychological Association, 6th edition, so APA 6. I can go at the end of my document and just click on Insert Bibliography, and that's it. So it's really simple and intuitive to do the in-text citations. If I need to use a different style, so I can go over to IEEE style, for example, and since it's a numbered style, for example, if I remove that part from here to there, and I click on refresh, then the ordering for the in-text citation and the list of references is automatically updated. If I go over and go for nature, for example, it works the same. If I go over and click on more styles, so I have styles that are installed on my computer. I can ask for more styles. So let's say the American Society. There's a problem with my connection there. So these are the ones I've already installed. A bit of a glitch here, but it should work the same anyway. And you can confirm that if you're still having any problems with that, please get in contact by email. But in general, I can search for different styles and download them to my computer and have them running as well. There are already styles that I've installed before, but they are more than the list that I've shown because I don't use them as much. So for example, Vancouver here. Now I have the style as Vancouver, and you might wonder a little bit why I have a style that's called, so if I went over there, more styles, there was a style that was called Vancouver modified by Khalid Chalan. That was a style I actually modified myself, so you can actually personalize and modify your styles as well. To do so, very easy because one of the sessions I was actually having before, I had a question from one of the audience, is that she was a PhD student. Her advisor was telling her that she needs to use a reference style that looks just like Vancouver. So that's how Vancouver looks like, but instead of having the in-text citation appearing as a bracket with a number, it's the same. So it's very similar to the way it's being written down there. The only difference, instead of having it look like that, it needs to look like with a superscript. So it's very similar to Vancouver, but there is that little tiny detail that changed. So there are a couple of ways I could modify an existing style or even create a new style. So if I go over here and I click and I visit csl.mendeley.com. So I can actually search by a style by name, search by example, or edit an existing slide. So there were two options. So since I've already modified this manually, I could just go and search for the style that she was describing that was very similar to Vancouver, but had that little modification. So if I'm searching by example, it will ask me to just put in how the in-text citation looks like and how the bibliographic entry at the list of references look like. So in our case there, I can just copy any of those. So let's copy this one here. And for the in-text citation, it should appear as a superscript, not as and I click on search, it will start to look for the closest matches for what I've just described there. So, and now I can actually start getting, and I can see how much of a good match these are for these. So these are actually very weak matches. So I could try another one of the references I've written. This one had one too many authors, for example. So now I'm seeing more results. As I remember on that exercise, because we used multiple examples, and it turned out to be that the style she was describing was precisely the anesthesiology. It's a bit of a tongue twister style. Her actual professor or advisor was actually an editor on that journal, and that's the style she actually wanted her to use. So I could actually just end up installing that style to be used on my computer. Or differently, I could have modified the style myself. So instead of searching by example, I could go back there and, I could go back to csl.mendeley.com, and I could have modified the Vancouver style myself. So I could go to the visual editor. I could start with a specific style and so load a style that has been created. So whether it's a file or, I have a file for it, or I could just start with describing how the style would look like. And I could just start editing the different parts of that style. Each edited part here would result in a change in the code that's created for the style. If I want to go deep into the details, I can go to the code editor part as well. The last thing I would need you to know, so we've used Mendeley Desktop and Mendeley Cite-O-Matic to start citing references. Alternatively, I could use the Mendeley Cite plugin. So Mendeley Cite is linked to the online version, so it would need an internet connection, or it could be linked to the Mendeley Reference Manager. So if I click here on the Mendeley Reference Manager, I can install Mendeley Cite for Microsoft Word. And as you can see here, so it brings me to the Microsoft Store, for example. I can get it now. And if I click on it, it will install by the end of the day as the Mendeley Cite here. So how this would work is that if I wouldn't recommend using both Mendeley Cite-O-Matic and Mendeley Cite for the same document. So stick to just one if you prefer one to the other. So if I'm clicking on Mendeley Cite, it would link with the Mendeley Reference Manager and the online version. Usually it would need an internet connection in most times. So I'm just clicking on sign in now. And I just need to put in my password. So now I can see the list of references I have in my library. Instead of searching all references, I could run a search for a specific thing, for example, and I can click on the references I want to insert citations for. So these here, it looks a bit differently because it uses different coding within Microsoft Word. And I can click on the citation style. So I can go and select another style similar to what we did and search for on Mendeley. So for example, the American Society of Pharmacology and Experimental Therapeutics. So I'm now updating how the style looks like. And by the end of things, I can just go over to more and insert bibliography. It will insert at the current cursor. If I need to update anything, I can refresh references as well. So this brings me to the end of our presentation today. We've used in-text citation and bibliography using Mendeley Cite and Mendeley Cite-O-Matic and Desktop. And we have looked into customizing reference styles there as well. I believe we could, Dr. Sadul, if we can look at some of the questions our audience has asked.
Thank you for the very interesting session, Khalid. And I have we have one question from one attendee. He has already installed Mendeley on his Mac desktop and also on mobile using the same ID. What he says is Mendeley will be, he get the message on the mobile that Mendeley will be removed from the App Store as from 15 March. And so he's asked.
Yeah, so there are currently some restructuring updates happening on within Mendeley. We're trying to change a little bit how things work. So the current version, Mendeley will be discontinued on App Store starting March 15th, while we do a little bit of restructuring things around before we can expand again into the App Store after that. But meanwhile, you can still use Mendeley on your mobile as well. Another thing that I've mentioned before, so if you have built your library on Mendeley Desktop or on Mendeley Reference Manager, is that you can always make sure that it has been synchronized. So if I click here, I'm synchronizing this library on my Mendeley Reference Manager, or here I could just click on sync. I just need to restart my Mendeley desktop or change my connection settings, because as we were working, I actually opened and closed my proxy server on my computer multiple times. But if I restart my Mendeley desktop, it should work again with that. So if I click on here, I'm actually syncing, and as you can see, it actually started responding now. So I'm syncing that with my cloud storage as well. I just need to restart my Mendeley desktop here. My IP changed 3 times while we were on the middle of the session. My apologies for that. It just works the same.
So I hope this answers the question.
Yeah, and I can see people are saying, how can I share something on my computer with my cloud storage? First, you need to add it to your Mendeley library. So for example, for the example that we've used there, I've actually had a couple of documents on my downloads folder. So I believe they were a bit there. So. So here, yeah, so these are all papers. So if I just put them into a folder, for example, so let's put these in a folder. Paste them. So I could just drag and drop all these papers into Mendeley Reference Manager or Mendeley Desktop. So just drag and drop, and then they will be synchronized. Or you can go to your Reference Manager, File, add new here. And you can add files from your computer. So you can select multiple files here, select them and open them. Or Mendeley Desktop has that interesting watch folder option, or add an entire folder. So I could just go to watch folder instead of going there. So just now, I would need to go to my downloads, for example. So let me check. So whatever folder I'm using, so for example, this here is a folder I could just add as a watch folder whenever any new document is being added. And I can tell what are the data I would be most looking for example, when I'm importing. So if I modify a specific, so for example, this here, as a watch folder, that would mean whenever any new PDF is added there, it will be added as well to my Mendeley library as well, and thus will be synced as well. So I could just add it once, or add it being continuously monitored via watch folder.
Okay, that's it. Let's see the other question. For writing comments and highlights, when I do using Mendeley, this is not seen when I'm using the same file stored on laptop. Yeah.
Okay. So Mendeley would not add the annotations back on the PDF on your computer. So it would not modify this PDF here. What Mendeley would do is that, so for example, if any of those files here has had, so let's just check this one. I'm reading it on my computer. If I have added annotations on the computer, on the website, it will still be visible within the Mendeley software itself. The notebook would still be visible, but it will not reflect back to the original PDFs there. So there's kind of metadata, or this kind of added data by comments and highlightings, or the notebook will only be visible within the Mendeley environment, whether it's the Mendeley Reference Manager, the Mendeley Desktop, or the Mendeley online version as well. So if there are any further questions, Dr. Sadul?
No, I think, okay, one last question maybe. Can one arrange references in Mendeley alphabetically based on the first author?
Yeah, so this is Mendeley Desktop. If I click on any of those tabs, it will start arranging. So I can arrange them by year, by title alphabetically, or by authors. Same, so if I just click here, all the authors are being arranged descendingly or ascendingly by author, ascendingly or descendingly by title, and so forth. And I could just control. Also, one thing is that you can press on Control A, select all documents. And if I click and update details, I will just ask them to start updating all the details there as well. One last note is that Mendeley can handle non-Latin characters. So this is, for example, written in Arabic. And as you can see here, so it can also write down reference lists, even if the reference has a title that's not written in Latin characters. So for example, if it's Arabic, if it's any other non-Latin script that you would be using, so for example, Sanskrit, for example, or Hindu, or Urdu, or a different, so I'm just stating out different examples. Cyrillic or whatever any other non-Latin characters as well, they could be handled by Mendeley as well. And here on the Mendeley library here as well, so I could also do the same to arrange whatever way I would like to arrange my folders there. So are we getting any further questions?
I think there's one. When we annotate on PDF directly, no, this one sorry. How do I convert Word file to Mendeley?
Okay, so a couple of ways there. So I could actually add, so I believe you can add Word documents to Mendeley. Let's make sure it's still supported within the last changes. So here I could add whatever this was. So I can add a Word document here as well. So just supports that if I need to. One thing that you need to remember, so if it's unpublished, I need to mark it here as unpublished and exclude from Mendeley Web Catalog. Or if I'm using the Mendeley Reference Manager, I could do the same. So it works in the negative. So I can unmark that this should be shared to the Mendeley Catalog, and similar to online. I could always ask Mendeley not to have something on its catalog because that's unpublished work. I don't want it to be shared with everyone publicly on Mendeley as well. So any here, I could just say that this is unpublished and please do not share. And remember one thing, so the online and the Mendeley Desktop Manager work in the affirmative, so if you unmark this, that means you're not sharing. If you're looking into the Mendeley Desktop, it's the exclusion that you marked for. So that should settle the question, I believe.
Yeah, I think we are done with the questions. Except that I think one could not synchronize documents on his desktop with his mobile. He's saying it's blank. I think that would be the last question we take.
Okay, so just make sure that the Mendeley, just make sure that the documents were synced online. So go to mendeley.com, open the library and check if those files have been synchronized in the cloud to start with. If you're still having any problems, please send me an email. I can just open a ticket with the Mendeley tech support, and we could investigate it further together.
Yeah, I think we are done with the questions. Micheline is. Okay. Are you in, Micheline?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, I will leave you to wrap up this session.
Yeah, okay. So on behalf of our CEO, Dr. Ganeshan, I wish to thank Elsevier Africa who organized this workshop in association with the OWSD Mauritius chapter. Thank you, Devika, for facilitating this. And thank you the resource person, Mr. Khalid. I'm sure all the participants must have appreciated the benefits of using this software, and also, as you said, you will be assisting anybody getting problems for troubleshooting. I'm sure you will be available for these whenever they get problem. So I believe that every researcher will find this Mendeley programmer very useful. And since our institution are putting a lot of emphasis on publications, this workshop is most opportune as it will definitely help our researchers to organize all their publications for use in the future. Thank you, and thank you all the participants for your patience in listening, and hopefully this will be very helpful to you. Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you, Micheline. Thank you, Khalid. Thank you, everybody. And we look forward to some more sessions after discussion. Thank you for putting your time and effort in all this. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
If I just may add one last thing. So I'm just reminding all our participants is that they will receive an email to get the recording for the session, to get the presentation material, and to get the recording. The certificates are issued by Elsevier Researcher Academy. So it would help if from here till you receive the email, if you could go to researcheracademy.com, create your accounts. There are a lot of free courses for researchers online. You will receive a link to a specific page within Researcher Academy itself to issue the certificates. So it would help if you have set up your accounts on Researcher Academy. It will be the same email and password as Mendeley while we send you those. And I would like to ask everyone to remain in contact, whether it's via our Facebook or our YouTube channel, or they could just, if they could just send an email to any of us in the Elsevier team there. You have my email on page. Once again, thank you, Dr. Sadouz. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Micheline Sinivasan Pillay. And I hope I'm not having any problems with the pronunciations. Please pardon me if I do. Thank you, OWSD, for hosting this webinar. And I hope to meet you all soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Have a nice evening.